Well, Christmas is a time for many to brighten up the house and garden with decorative lights, whether it's a simple string of twinkling bulbs or a full-on luminescent display. It all adds to the joy of the season.
But that joy is taking its toll on nocturnal wildlife. So let's get into it with Jaana Dielenberg from the Biodiversity Council. Jaana, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on Weekend Breakfast this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So it's obviously a significant issue here, significant enough for the Australian government to launch an education campaign in November about the impact of what lights can do to our wildlife. Take us through some of this impact very briefly.
Well, firstly, we should remember that all of our animals evolve with natural darkness, and they use that in a lot of important ways. For example, most of Australia's mammals and frogs, and also a great number of our birds and reptiles, are nocturnal, so they're just active at night. And they use the darkness so that they can go about their activities of feeding and caring for their young while avoiding predators, so predators don't see them, because most of the nighttime predators, like owls, but also the introduced predators like cats and foxes, use eyesight to see those prey animals that are things like native mice, bush rats, possums, gliders, frogs. And so when there's extra light around, it really leaves those animals exposed to predators, which is one of the reasons that many studies have found that animals will avoid areas of lit habitat. And so we might have great areas of habitat that animals could be using, say in our parklands or in our gardens, but they're not using it because they're exposed to light. Or sometimes in our urban areas, there's just so much light around, they have no choice. They have to use those lit areas, but it makes them very exposed to predators and it makes them very stressed. So that's kind of one example. And then at the other end, so that's when we've got light shining on areas of vegetation and habitat.
Right.
But a lot of our light also shines up towards the sky whenever we have lights that aren't shielded. And they're not directed just straight down, and that light adds to sky glow, and that sky glow can be visible from hundreds of kilometres away. And so even things like hatching sea turtles, young fledgling seabirds that are all off to take their first trip, they get very confused and attracted to the lights because you have to remember these are often newly hatched or only a few months old, and they're just driven by that instinct to follow the light because the light used to only be the moon or the glow of the horizon.
Right.
And they're really confused and they can end up not finding the ocean or not being able to go off on their migration pathway, and many end up dying.
I read too that light pollution can be a threat to survival of some of the species, and one of those examples is the seabirds.
Yes, that's right. So in many places around the world, shearwaters, which we also call mutton birds, the short-tailed shearwaters, the hatching seabirds, fledging, when they're a few months old and they come out of their burrow ready to take their first flight off and navigate all the way up to the northern hemisphere, they get attracted to light so much so that they crash into things like streetlights, car headlights, and large proportions of them die, or they fly around in circles so much confused that they end up on the ground exhausted, and then they're, say, picked off by foxes, which is very sad.
Okay, so is there a way that we are able to light up the season, our homes, our gardens, but at the same time, save our wildlife?
Absolutely. So it's important for everyone to realise that light pollution is a problem year-round. So whatever we can do in our outdoor lighting to reduce the number of lights, how long we leave them on for, make sure they're angled downward and not use overly bright lights when we don't need them is valuable. But at Christmas, it just gets that much more significant because we add so many more lights to the environment, and particularly for that kind of the trees and shrubs in our yard, we make so much more of that space unavailable to animals. So at Christmas, key things you can do, you can think about, do I need to festoon my whole house in really bright lights in my garden? Or what about some beautiful daytime decorations or beautiful festive plantings like Christmas bush and woolly bush and Christmas bells are beautiful native plants that flower really brightly this time of year. Or if you really want to put up some lights, how about a beautiful little window display rather than putting the lights on your shrubs and trees?
Right.
So try and leave some dark areas in your garden and leave your shrubs and trees dark, and that includes resisting the urge to fill them up with fairy lights year round, because that means we're making more habitat available for the animals in our in our suburbs.
And of course, the kind of lights that you use are also very important as well. I read that while we may want to save energy and use LEDs, they're not actually the best kind of lights.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So LED lights are really rich in white and blue light, and that is very stimulating sort of at a biological level. In the same way it is for humans. So my phone at night has a night light setting. It takes out the blue light and makes it look a bit orange, because that blue light can have a lot of biological impacts. But unfortunately for our wildlife, even the ones that aren't nocturnal, the ones that are just trying to get a good night's sleep at night, it's not like they can go into their bedroom and close the curtains and block out all the light we're putting out there. So especially reducing things like LED lights at night. And if you've got one shining on your yard, angle it down. If you only need to see the washing line, just point it at the washing line and turn it off when you're done in your yard. That's an excellent way to help the wildlife around you.
All very good tips. Jaana Dielenberg, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much for having me on the show.